Good evening. Today's daf is daf Ayin Gimel. We are going to begin on daf Ayin Beis Amud Beis, Taru Rabbanon, towards the bottom of the Amud, 3 lines from the bottom, the last word Taru Rabbanon. Gemara now is going to bring a brisa in regards to women that are allowed to marry, that a ger is allowed to marry them. Taru Rabbanon, we learned in a brisa. Ger, Neisa, Mamzeres, a convert, a ger, is allowed to marry a mamzeres. These are the words of Rabbi S. Rabbi Yehuda argues and says, ger le'yisa mamzeres, a ger is not allowed to marry a mamzeres. Echad ger, echad eved meshuchrar, v'cholol mutanim b'kehenes. However, a ger, a eved meshuchrar, necholol, is allowed to marry a kohenes, the daughter of a kohen. My time is Rabbi S. So the Gemara asks, what's the reason of Rabbi S, who's matir a ger to marry a mamzeres? So he says, Chamisha kahole ksive. It says 5 times the word kahal in the Torah. It says the word kahal when the Torah warns on psula yuchsin, things that are puzzle for yuchsin. The Torah says 5 times call. Layovi mamzer b'kol Hashem. It says that a mamzer can't go into kol Hashem. The Torah says also gam deir asidi layovi lo b'kol Hashem. Layovi ameni layovi b'kol Hashem. Gam deir asidi layovi lohem b'kol Hashem. In regards to Mitzrayim, Gadim of Mitzrayim and Adumim, it says, Deir Shlishi Yovei Lahem B'Kal Hashem. So it says 5 times the word Kahal. So from here, it basically says that Chad L'Kenim, one is referring to a Kohen to teach that people that have Psula Yuchsin, flawed lineage, may not enter their Kehillah. To aser mamzerim to kohenim, that mamzerim should not come to the kahal of kohenim. V'chad, and another time it says kahal is l'levim, to aser them to levim. V'chad, and the third time is to aser them to Yisraelim. V'chad, and another time is the mishlei shtuki b'Yisrael, is to be mater a mamzer for a shtuki, which means he doesn't know who his father is, to marry a yid, to marry a shtuki, and v'chad l'mishti shtuki b'Yisrael, to mater shtuki, to marry a bas Yisrael, and so those are the 5 times. So one for kohenim, one for levim, one for Yisrael, and one to mishti mamzer b'shtuki, and the mishti shtuki b'Yisrael. Kahal gedim lo ikri kahal. As for the congregation of converts, it's not called congregation at all. So since Gadim are not called Kahal, they're allowed to marry those prohibited from entering the congregation of Yisrael. So therefore, according to him, a ger can marry a mamzeres. What's Rabbi Yehuda going to do? He's going to say, Kohenim Levim mechat kahal nafki. Kohenim Levim, we learn that out from the word kahal. Since they're from the same Shevet, that are Levi, so now you have an extra word. So now that you have an extra word, so the Gadim are called Kahal. So therefore he interprets it that it's referring to the congregation of Gadim, and it's also for a mamzer to enter in Layavi mamzer b'Kal Hashem, and that means Gadim as well. If you wish to say, Hachanami, so too Rabbi Yehuda agrees with Rabbi S that Levim and Kohenim are today called in There are 2 congregations. Why? Because they have special halachas of marriage that apply only to Kohenim. So Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's permissible. Rabbi Yehuda holds that the permissibility of the marriage of a shtuki, mamzer b'shtuki b'yisrael mechat kol nafke, and Layavi Mamzer B'Kal Hashem. He learns it out from a Mamzer. It says they're one congregation, and a Mamzer should not enter into the congregation. So he says like this.
A Mamzer and a Shtuki, the same idea.
Yeah. Now he says like this. This is accomplished by as follows. Mamzer Vadehu Layavi Kal, which means a definitive Mamzer may not enter B'Kal, a Mamzer Safik Yavi. But a Mamzer Safik, which is a Shtuki, could. B'Kal Vadehu Layavi, Hob Safik Yavi. And similarly, it's into the congregation of those who have definitive, unflawed yuchsin that a mamzer may not enter, but into the congregation of those who are safek, a shtuki, he may enter. So the pasuk therefore teaches that both types of marriage are permitted. So what do you see? Rabbi Yehuda maintains with one instance of the word kahal to interpret, for which he derives that it's also usher for a ger to marry a mamzeres. You could say that Hani Nami Tre Kahalininu. These two, in other words, one who is a definite mamzer and one who is a mamzer as a result of suffix, are Hani Tre Kahalininu, are two congregations, so they, each one requires its own pasuk. The time of Rabbi Yehuda Mahachi, and the reason of Rabbi Yehuda is from here. Hakol chuka achas lachem v'lager hagor. It says, as for the congregation, there shall be the statue both for you and for the stranger with you, which is mashma that Gerim are considered like Yidden with regards to their being included in the category of Kahal. And according to Rabbi S, you hold that a Ger may marry Mamzeros, which is mashma that they're not part of the Kahal. Chuka'achas hifsika inyan. The pasuk of Chuka'achas now interrupts the matter, and Gerim are not considered part of the, and therefore Gerim are not considered part of Kahal Hashem. Yeah, it's part of the lingo. Echad ger ve'echad even meshucher v'chol mutarim b'kehenis. A convert, a even meshucher, and a cholol are permitted to marry the daughter of a kohen. Women, he says that women of good yuchsin, who are daughters of kohanim, were not also for marrying those disqualified from the kuna due to the flawed yuchsin, since the isra applies only to kohanim and not pas kohen. Ger mutar b'mamzeres is permitted for a convert to marry mamzeres. So everyone stoned him with sregim, since the many gerim present were insulted by his statements, which they understood to mean that gerim are not members of kahal, right? Ger is mutar b'mamzeres, which is mashma that a ger is not part of. So they stole him. Amar Rava, so Rava says, is there a person who teaches such a matter in a place where there are commonly gerim? Should have been more careful. He says a ger is mutar. Tanu b'shiroi. So what happened was he permitted gerim to marry the daughters of a kohen, and they carried him on silk. In other words, they gave him a lot of covet for what he said. Yeah. So then he said, ger is mutar b'mamzeres. Amalei haf seidna l'kamaisa. So he says that you have forfeited the honor of your first speech. So Rava said to him, I have done for you what is good for you. If a ger wishes, he may marry from here, from those who have good yuchsin. And if he wishes, he may marry from here, mamzeres. The hilchasa, what's the halacha? Ger mutar b'kehenes and mutar mamzeres. It's permitted for a ger to marry the daughter of a kehenes and mutar mamzeres, and it's mutar mamzeres. Mutar b'kehenes, it's permitted for a mutar b'kehenes. Good ger mutar b'kehenes and mutar mamzeres. Mutar b'kehenes, it's mutar for kehenes because lehuzuruk shares the nasil psulim, because the ksherim are the women of good yuchsin were not usher from marrying those disqualified of the kuna. Mutar b'mamzeres, and it's mutar for mamzeres, as Rabbi S who holds that the kahal of converts is not called a kihila. Okay, the Mishnah says Elohin shtuki. These are, it says shtuki koil shemakir. It says, and these are the last two categories of. These are the last two categories. A shtuki is any person who knows the identity of his mother but does not know who his father is. Amar Rava says the vartera shtuki kosher. Minatera shtuki is fit to enter to marry kahal, to enter in the kihila yisrael. My time it is because he holds most are fit with regards to her. Most men are fit to have relations with a unmarried woman. And it's only the minority that are unfit with regards to having relations with her. And there are a few men who are related to a woman in a way that would render the child a mamzer. So therefore, now Rava analyzes two possibilities. And if they came to her, in other words, if the father came to the mother's location when the child was, this is a famous thing. If they came to her, in other words, if the father came to the mother's location where the child was conceived, So then you have the principle with regarding the suffix, because called the parish, merubah parish. Anything that separates from kavua is presumed to have separated from the majority of items like in that location. So if the father separated from the population at large and came to the mother, you can assume that he was from the majority who has good yuchsin. And my amris, dilma oz le'ila gabaya havele kavua. Now, what are you going to say? That perhaps she went to him and the child was conceived in the place where the father was. So then you have a kavua, and chol kavua, anytime you have fixed, we say half and half, 50%, and it remains a suffix, and it should be usher for the shtuki to marry yid with good yuchsin. So mimonashach. What do you say? Rava says dvar teira. If he goes to her, then we say call the parish merubah parish. Now, if she goes to him, then the chayr should be called kavua, k'mechza mechza dami.
Where's the kavua?
He's the kavua.
So therefore, it's also.
Yeah, therefore it should be usher. In any case, this doesn't suffice to prevent her shtuki child from marrying a yid with good yuchsin. Atera Omar, what does the Torah say? Lo yavi mamzer. Torah says that a mamzer is not allowed to go in. Mamzer vada lo yavi. Ha mamzer suffix yavi. Bekal vada hu lo yavi. Ha bekal suffix yavi. Therefore, even if it's a suffix, if one is a mamzer, minat Torah, he may marry a yid with good yuchsin. Umatam amr shtuki pasul. So why did the Chacham say that a shtuki is pasul? Say Hashem yavi yisach yisim aviv, that perhaps he will marry a sister from his father since he doesn't know who his father is. Alamat effective mar shtuki. Shtuki should not be able to shtuki lo yisa because shema yisa chesim aviv. Maybe he should not be able to marry shtuki lest he marry his sister from his father. Where it says koel kihani mezanav asli, and do people engage in such relationships to that extent that one should be concerned that all the children of unknown paternity in one city who fathered by the same man, by the same reason, there should also be a decree that a shtuki also shtuki lo yisis. A bashtuki also should not marry because Shem Yisach Yisim Aviv, lest he marry his sister from his father. Since the man who married the female shtuki might have been his father. Ella rather sutir is not shchicha. Since it's not common for him to happen to marry a sister, and the Chacham will not issue a exeria to prevent this from occurring. Now the Gemara the question therefore remains: why did they render it usher for a shtuki to marry a yid with yuchsin? So my answer is that it's not usher for a shtuki to marry a yid with yuchsin due to any halacha concerns. Ela maila also be yuchsin. They established a higher standard with regards to yuchsin, in that they rendered it usher for people from unknown backgrounds to marry those with good yuchsin. Now, V'Omer Rava says dvar teira, by teira law, a sufi kosher. A sufi, which means a child found in the marketplace whose parents are unknown, is kosher, and there's no concern that the child is a mamzer. My time, what's the reason? Eishes ish bebaila teila. Now, a married woman who became pregnant through, let's say, bia, which results in the child being a mamzer, so ascribes that the child to her husband. Since everyone assumes that her husband is the father, she has no reason to abandon the child in the marketplace. Now, so therefore,
Asufi means that he doesn't know who his parents are.
No, but if they knew who the father is, so why is he abandoning him?
Why is it called Asufi?
So ma'ika. So the Gemara asks. So what is the case where the mother would want to abandon her mom's or child? Ma'ika. There's the minority of situations involving a woman who's kudeshes, who committed adultery but cannot claim that her Kidushin is the father, as they have not been living together. And there's a minority of women whose husbands have gone overseas and cannot have fathered the child. Now, since there are many other cases of unmarried women who do abandon their children, although those children have good yuchsin, and we can the machmas oven, and there are also children with good yuchsin who are abandoned by their parents due to hunger. So the concern that the child is a mamzer is therefore have a palgo. It's half and half. The Torah says Le'yovi mamzer bakal Hashem, mamzer vade Le'yovi. It has to be a mamzer vade, mamzer suffik yovim. Bakal vade Le'yovi, and ha bakal suffik yovzi. Yovi. Umatam amra sufi pasul. So why do they say sufi is pasul? Because Shem Yisachesim Aviv, same thing. Lest he marry his sister from his father. Alamata sufi is like Yisra Shem Yisachesim by an Aviv benime, the same thing. So kol hani shadiv azli. So the Gemara says, It should rather it must be that ella basu suvilis shamis achis ella the same thing. Okay, so now the question therefore remains: why did they aser a asufi from marrying a yid with yuchsin? Our answer is that the iser for a sufi is again the same thing as Maila Osub Yuchsin. They established a higher standard. Same with the shtuki, yeah. They established a higher standard with regards to Yuchsin. And Amarava Badav Huna. Now, Matzomo, if an abandoned boy was found with a bris. Can you bring a napkin? Sorry, I spilled there. It says, I got it, sorry. So he says like this. Okay, yeah. If you found this child that has a mole, thank you. He's not subject to the halachas of a asufi. In other words, if the baby's yuchsin were unfit, his parents would have not gone to the trouble of giving him a bris. Mishalti hadami, if his limbs are adjusted, indicating that he was cared for after the birth. Maybe mishum asufi also, we don't say it's asufi. Shayaf mishcha, if he was anointed with oil, or malikuchla, or his eyes were smeared with eye salve. Rami Chumri, or let's say he had adorned with rings, Tali Pisco Tli Kamiya, or let's say he had a note was hanging on him, or was an amulet was hanging over it. Halachas Eim Mishum Asufi, there's no din of Asufi. Tli B'dikli, concerning a child found hanging from a palm tree, Imot Yelechaya, if he was in such a place that an animal could reach him, Yesh Mishum Asufi, he is subject to the halachas of Asufi. Im Lav, if he was placed on a palm tree in a way that he cannot be reached by an animal, Eim Mishum Asufi, he's not the subject of Asufi since he was cared enough to be placed in a safe location.
So, cared enough means that
only exactly. Zardesa smicha the masa. If a child was placed in a thicket near a town where people are not commonly found, yesh b'mishum asufi, then we're subject to the sufi. V'im lav im mishum asufi. If not, then we don't say zash sufi. Be'knishta smicha l'masa shchicha be'rabim im mishum asufi. If the child was discovered in a shul near a town and people are commonly found there, he's not subject to the halachas of a sufi since the parents wanted to give him to others. And if not, he is subject to the halachas of a sufi. Omar Meimer says, "Hi peta de sufli." With regards to these cistern into which date pits are placed, yesh mishum sufi. If a child is found there, they are subject to a sufi. Harifta de nahara mishum sufi. If he was found in the middle of a fast-flowing river with boats passing by, he is not subject to a sufi. But if he was found at the side of the river, then we say he's subject to a sufi. If he's found on the side of the Rishus Rabim, yesh boy mishum asufi. He does have the din of a sufi. Rishus Rabim then yesh boy. Sorry, ein boy mishum asufi. Rishus Rabim yesh boy mishum asufi. When it comes to Rishus Rabim, we say that he is a sufi.
The extra care TLC.
Exactly. The extra care, then we say the parents, they're normal parents, but whatever. Or I should say, parents with yuchsin, but okay. Amar Rabba, Shnei Oven Ema Mishum Asufi, in a year of famine, he's not subject to the halachas of a sufi. So the Gemara asks, Hod Rabba Ahoya. The statement of Rabba, to which specific cases are referring to? If we say, to the case where a child was left in Rishus Harabim, so if we say it's in the case where the child was left in Rishus Harabim, because it is a famine year, would the mother kill him by placing him in a place where he's likely to be trampled? Rather, it's going under Rishus Harabim. Why dafka shnei oven? Even when it's not a famine years, the child was placed in a safe location, and he was likely where he's likely to be found. So why are you saying is that sufi? Rather, when Rava said a statement, Rabbi Abba Rabbi Yehuda Bar Zavda Ravi said, as long as this abandoned child is in the marketplace, of the imin eman and love, the father and the mother are credible with regards to him when they later claim that this child is theirs. Nesav min hashuk, but once the child has been collected from the marketplace, ein eman and love, they are not deemed credible with regards to him. My time, what's the reason? Since the child had already been publicized with the name of being a asufi, his yuch there's already a koil, and therefore once there's a koil that he's an asufi, they cannot change the status of the child. Rav says and in famine years, even though although the child has been collected from the marketplace, of the imin eman love, his father and his mother are deemed credible with regards to him. And it's common even for parents of good yuchsin to abandon their children in years of famine, and it's likely that they're saying the truth. Rav Chisda says, there are 3 cases where people are deemed credible if they immediately offer testimony with regards to a matter about which they are not ordinarily deemed credible to testify. When Elohim Asufi, this is our Sufi, Chaya, a midwife, and Peteres Chaverisel, and one who exempts her friends from a suffix. And we're going to see Asufi Adamar, we said in the Sufi, which we said that his parents can testify with regards to his yuchsim before he's already nesaf menashuk, before he's collected from the marketplace. Chaya, what's the case of a midwife? The Tanya. A midwife is deemed credible to say that this child emerged first from the womb, and that child emerged second from the womb. Her testimony is relied upon to determine which of them is the firstborn. 1 second. When did we say this? When she has left, she did not leave the birthing room and return. But if she left and came back, she's not believed. Rabbi Lazar says, if she has stood in her place, so she's deemed credible. What's the difference between them? The difference between them is in a case where the midwife turned her head aside from the birth. According to Rabbi Lazar, she's no longer deemed credible despite having remained in the room. What's the case of a person who exempts her friends? That's now we learned in a Mishnah. The Mishnah says, if 3 women who were sleeping in one bed and dam was found beneath one of them, so kulun tameis, the halacha is that they're all deemed tamei as a nida, because we don't know from where the dam came from. If they checked one of them, or one of them checked herself and she was tamei, so the halacha is he tameya, she's tamei v'kulun teres, the rest of them are tar. She examined the supplies, provided that she examined herself within the period of time needed for her vesses, for her menstruation. In other words, immediately after the discovery of the blood. But if she did so even a short while later, her discovery is not accepted as a raya with regards to where the makar of the dam is coming. Okay, so now several women gave birth at the same time. The midwife is believed to say is a kohen, is a levi, is a nosim, is a mamzer. Now, when no objection was registered about it, but if, let's say, there was an error, there was an objection, then she's not believed. What type of an objection? If you say it's an objection of one witness claiming that her testimony is not accurate, error has to be at least with 2 people. Rather, the Bryce is referring to a case that the objection of 2 witnesses, but she is deemed credible when contradicted by 1/8. And if you want to say, I can even tell you that she's not deemed credible even when she's contradicted by 1/8. When is that? When there is a presumption of validity which can be countered only by the objection of 2 witnesses. But when there is no cheskes kashrus over there, one witness is also deemed credible to object. Okay, we'll stop here.